To our listeners, if anybody was in with us at the very beginning, we had a little technical difficulty. We're sorry about that. It's 11 minutes past 11 right now. Last time we were running half an hour late, so we're getting much better. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you're still with us. My name is Carl Alta with the Joint Baltic American National Committee, and welcome to our second JBANC Google Hangout. Today, the topic is Belarus and the World Ice Hockey Championships, which are starting tomorrow in that country. They're being hosted by Alexander Lukashenko, who is the longtime, almost two-decade leader, proverbial last dictator of Europe, of Belarus. In the meantime, we've seen other dictators appearing over the horizon, but we'll get into those maybe in another program. There are human rights concerns in Belarus and political prisoners in that country, particularly after the fraudulent 2010 election. Before the championships, there also seems to be a crackdown occurring right now in Belarus. There have been activists who have been arrested. Foreign observers, including one from Sweden just the other day, have been barred from entering the country. So we have a lot of questions about these hockey games this morning. How open are they? Is it a good thing or a bad thing for Belarus? And how does this situation in neighboring Ukraine play into all of this? So was this the right decision to have it in these countries? The International Ice Hockey Federation it was their decision to have the games. And so we're happy to have with everybody today, with us today, four leading experts. Hopefully a fifth one will be joining us. Voices in human rights issues who can help us wade through these questions. So we're just going to do some quick introductions now and then get into a quick second round of a little more detailed questions. So beginning with our furthest flung guest, Vitas Jurkonis, who's the director of the Freedom House office in Vilnius, Lithuania. Good morning. Good morning, Vitas. We have Catherine Ann Fitzpatrick coming to us live from New York. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
And then also here in Washington, to your left is Slava Bortnik with Amnesty International, and to his left is Alice Kippel with the Belarus American Association. So glad to have all of you with us here today. And I think maybe we'll start with Vitas. You were here in D.C. about a year and a half ago with the wives of 3 or 4 political prisoners from Belarus who were at that point incarcerated after the fraudulent election. So we wanted to find out what the situation is with the political prisoners. How are they faring right now? How are they doing? And then perhaps just a follow-up question about the relevance of what is going on in Belarus to the Baltics. You are our one representative who's actually in the Baltics right now in Lithuania's capital, Vilnius. So what does it look like from your position?
Well, as for the political prisoners, currently there are 8 political prisoners, but we have already like more than a dozen, almost 2 dozens of activists who are preventively arrested before the ice hockey championship. So actually the number of politically oppressed is increasing, and that's a sad fact. The official slogan of the Ice Hockey Championship is "Together we celebrate," and of course that is a rather cynical approach, knowing that there are political prisoners in the country, and the relatives of prisoners, of course, they see it as an opportunity to raise the issues that, well, while some of the country fellow men are enjoying the games, unfortunately political prisoners are not. And also that's a message for the international community that we should use the momentum expressing the solidarity with the political prisoners, with the human rights activists, saying that, well, if in the very heart of Europe you cannot have political prisoners, and definitely that doesn't apply the rules of any game, and it obviously is not the fair play by the Belarusian authorities. As for the Baltic countries, of course, at least Lithuania is not such a big fan of ice hockey. Actually, Belarusians themselves are not such big fans of ice hockey either. It's more the sport number one for Lukashenko. So you have to bear in mind that basically he made the celebration for himself rather than for the nation.
There's those are very good points that you made. I know Latvia, your neighbor to the north. Latvians are very big ice hockey fans,
Indeed.
and I know that they're having to face some difficult decisions about their the participation there, and kind of harkens back to the Sochi Olympic Games, and what was going on before the games in Russia, all of the issues related to that, and then also looking ahead uh, at Russia and the World Cup in soccer in 2018. So there are some decisions that the international community has to make on this. But I wanted to perhaps get back more to the. I know that there are Belarusians who have come over to the Baltics and to Lithuania. Some escaping Lukashenko's regime because of pressures on them, and there's even a university in exile, the European Humanities University, which is located in Vilnius. Freedom House, the NGO which you work with, they're here in Washington, and you have the office in Vilnius. They have a campaign right now, which is an international campaign to draw attention to the ice hockey championships, and maybe you can discuss that perhaps in a little more detail.
Well, it's an international campaign, and we ask different organizations, international organizations, and also Belarusian organizations to join this campaign, saying that Belarus must play fair in sports and beyond. We are calling Belarus to be an open and democratic country where fair play is not only a motto but the way of living. So that's the idea. Basically, the fair play is a sports term, so it's definitely not political. But we know that the regime leaders, the leaders of regime countries, they tend to use sports as a show-off case. Also seeking the recognition for from the international community. So our point is that if you want to be part of the international community, you need to apply to some certain rules, and definitely political prisoners are like unbearable the fact, and the human rights violations are not acceptable. So already more than 20 organizations joined the campaign, and I think that it's a fascinating thing. And we are trying to do all the best to raise the concerns of the human rights community.
Thank you, Vitis. I know that JBANC and 20 other organizations, along with Freedom House and the Belarus American Association, have also signed this statement, which is available on JBANC's website, and we'll make it available on this event page as well. So thank you, and to Freedom House for taking the lead in this effort to draw more attention to that. We're going to go over to Slava and to hear from Amnesty International in just a minute, but I wanted to introduce you to another special guest who has just joined us today, and that's Franek Viachorka. He's coming to us from somewhere in Belarus today, so he's actually there on the ground, or perhaps underground, and we're very glad that you can join us. I just wanted to make a quick introduction of Franek. He's a Belarusian youth leader, independent journalist, and a screenwriter. And with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, he's a new media manager at the Belarus service. So this is all secondhand to you. I know all this media, new media, social media. aspect, and also should say that Fronic was the first RFERL Havel Fellow, and is the co-screenwriter and second director of the film Viva Belarus, which was released in 2013. So Fronic, welcome. Hope you're safe there, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you in just a bit. But hi.
Hello, good evening. I have already evening here.
Great, great. So very glad you could join us today. And now I'm going to turn over to Slava. Slava Vyacheslav Bortnik is country specialist for Moldova, for Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine at Amnesty International USA. He's been with Amnesty for 19 years and has served in a variety of roles, including chairperson of Amnesty International Belarus about 10 years ago or so. So Slava, wanted to ask you also about the fact that you are originally from Belarus, and you're here in Washington now. And from now a Washington perspective, how do you see the situation there? And also tell us, as Vitas did, more about Amnesty International's campaign to draw attention to the World Ice Hockey Championships going on.
Carl, thank you for invitation to this important discussion. I became a member of Amnesty International while I was a student at the Gomel State University in 1995. Gomel is the second biggest city in Belarus, which is located in the southeast of the country on the border with Russia and Ukraine. At that time, it happened to be just a year after Lukashenko became the first Belarusian president. And at that time, Belarus was on the path to join Council of Europe. However, the human rights situation has deteriorated very seriously since then. In 1996, Lukashenko was able to change the constitution that helped him to accumulate unlimited powers in his hands. That is why partly why Belarus lost the special guest status at Council of Europe. But it seems like it didn't bother Lukashenko. In 1999 and 2000, Belarus has seen a number of political disappearances, including two high-profile politicians, opposition politicians, a famous businessman, and independent journalist. Since 2000, no political party was registered in Belarus. In 2004, the constitution was changed again by lifting the presidency term limit. That gave Lukashenko opportunity to run every 5 years without any limits. In 2005, the criminal code was amended, and the addition of notorious Article 193.1 criminalized the activities of unregistered non-governmental organizations. And as you said before, Belarus became a center of international attention in 2010. In the night of December 19th, thousands of people went to the street in Minsk to protest the results of the fraudulent election, and more than 700 people had been arrested and detained, and including most opposition presidential candidates. Today, 2 people are still in prison, 2 long-term prisoners of conscience, Nikolai Statkevich and Eduard Lobo. Nikolai Statkevich was running as opposition candidate, and he was accused with organizing public disturbances and sentenced to 6 years in prison. And Eduard Lobo, one of the leaders of Young Front, the largest oppositional youth organization in Belarus, was accused with hooliganism. He was arrested a day before the election to prevent him to possible participation in the protests, and he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Amnesty International has been following the situation in Belarus since the very first years of its independence, and this year around Ice Hockey World Championship, our main goals include the unconditional and immediate release of all prisoners of conscience, including Ales Belyatsky, Nikolai Statkevich, and Eduard Lobo, and also all those who were preventively arrested just in the course of 2 weeks before the championship. We are receiving reports from Minsk, and as far as we know, there were about 20 people arrested and more people detained.
And that was the Young Front, which is Malady Front?
Yeah, Malady Front, yeah. And Belarus remains to be the last country in Europe and Central Asia that still executes its citizens. And the newest cases, the newest death row prisoner was executed just 3 weeks before the beginning of the championship. To coincide with World Hockey Ice Hockey World Championship, Amnesty International started a social media campaign with the web portal Virtual Ice Hockey Stadium, and probably it's the easiest way to join our campaign. You just have to go online.
Oh, there you go. Hold it up just a little bit. There you go. So that's HTTP www Belarus dot.
Amnesty CZ. Actually, this campaign was originally developed by the Czech Republic section of Amnesty International, and by you can book your ticket, as I did, to sit along with the prisoners of conscience and watch the human rights in Belarus. And also your signature will be added to the global petition that will be sent at the end of the action to Alexander Lukashenko. There are also other ways of participation. You can get in touch with your Congress member, as we did together with Freedom House and Belarusian American Association. We approached about 60 Congress members and asked them to make public statements to talk about championship and human rights violations in Belarus. Last week, a representative of Illinois, John Shimkus, made a floor statement calling on Belarusian authorities for immediate and unconditional release of all political prisoners. And 2 days ago, a representative of Virginia, Jim Moran, released a video addressed to the Belarusian government. Also, together with the Belarusian American Association and Human Rights First, we wrote letters to members of the U.S. ice hockey team. They are in Minsk now. We hope them good luck. By the way, the U.S. team is playing with Belarus tomorrow. And we also provide them with information about the human rights situation in Belarus and ask them to use every opportunity to get engaged in discussions on human rights. 2 of the hockey players agreed to write an op-ed for Sports Illustrated. However, yesterday I found out that they canceled this because of the fear for their own safety in Minsk and also of the beloved ones who went to Minsk with them. And another good way to express solidarity with the prisoners of conscience is to write a card or a letter. It doesn't cost much and doesn't take much time, but we talked to family members of Belarusian prisoners of conscience, and they told us that these messages of support are very, very important for them. They help them not to feel lonely. Most Belarusian political prisoners are kept in total isolation from other inmates, and also they help them to cope with the harsh environment of the Belarusian prisons. So we welcome you to participate in our campaign.
That's wonderful, Slava. Thank you for all that detailed information about that. I think we have also purchased one of the tickets. We have, yes. I asked my co-producer here, Lita Huberta, in the office about it. So JBANC has purchased a ticket to the games on your website, and all of what you mentioned, the campaign along with Freedom House's campaign that we're posting information on our website as well, along with the floor statement from Congressman John Shimkus, who's a great friend to the Baltics as well. He's the co-chair of the House Baltic Caucus, and Congressman Moran's video. So, so thank you for all your efforts. And before I turn over to Alice Kippel, I just wanted to remind our audience, our viewers today, that at the end of the broadcast, hopefully we'll have some time for questions. So if you're interested in asking any of the speakers or all of us a question, then you can respond to JBANC's Twitter on JBANC's Twitter site, which is JBANC Chatter, and also on JBANC's Facebook site. So we'll try to get those at the bottom part of the program. Now, Alice, I've known you for a long time. You're with the Belarus American Association here in Washington. You're the vice president of the D.C. chapter and also a lawyer in Washington. JBANC and the Belarus American Association have worked together for a long time, also within the Central and East European Coalition. And maybe just to get a better picture for everybody about the Belarus community here in the U.S., how many Belarusians are there in the U.S.? Where are they? What are the priorities of your organization and in the communities? What are they interested in? Are these ice hockey championships registering for the Belarusians who live here? And how have you been campaigning on this particular issue, meaning your organization? So, Alice?
Thank you, Carl. Really appreciate the opportunity, and the Belarus American Association very much appreciates the work that we've been able to do with JBANC, also with Freedom House and Amnesty International with respect to the hockey championships and otherwise when it comes to the issues of democracy and human rights in Belarus. The Belarus American Association, our platform vis-a-vis Belarus has always been support for a free and independent and democratic Belarus. The Belarus American Association was founded in the late 1940s in the United States, and that has been our mantra all along. Obviously, there have been various political changes in Belarus along the way, but it remains our mantra. And we want a free and independent Belarus where there's a respect for democracy and for human rights. And that's what our campaigns are always about. We also want respect for Belarusian history, for the Belarusian culture, the Belarusian language. It's part and parcel of the human rights and democracy package. We estimate that there are probably about 1.5 million people in the United States who can trace their roots to Belarus over a long period of time. So some of these people are obviously second, third, fourth, fifth generation Americans. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to track the number of Belarusians or Americans who trace their roots to Belarus because of the inadequacy of census data and other data that tracked people coming from what is now Belarus, but over different periods of history may have been part of one or another empire. And so the way that you can track most readily is based on what town, village, city did people come from. And what you find when you scratch the surface, a lot of people who said, oh, well, I'm from Russia or I'm from Poland, when you actually find out from what city or village their ancestors were from, you find out that they're actually from Belarus. So it's a very difficult process. That's why it's a very rough estimate. In terms of this hockey campaign, I would say that the Belarusian American Association from the start was against having the championships in women's because of the human rights situation, the lack of democracy, the lack of people being able to really assemble, express their viewpoints. There's no free media really in Belarus to speak of. So we didn't think it was appropriate. We campaigned and wrote letters, asked others to write letters to not have the championships in Belarus. Unfortunately, the decision was made to award the championships to Belarus and to keep them there. They're there, they're going to start tomorrow, and in light of that, we felt it was important to use the opportunity to focus in on the political prisoners and the human rights issues in Belarus. And as Congressman Moran said in his statement, it's also an opportunity, we think, that if the Belarusian regime were so inclined to show the world that they're ready to make some changes. So we do urge the regime to show some goodwill and to release the political prisoners and start to show the world that there can be respect for individual liberties and human rights in Belarus. So we continue to hope that there might be an exercise of this opportunity. The other thing that we would like to be able to do is to explain to the world who is focusing in on the championships in Minsk some facts about Belarus, that Belarus is not that widely known outside of its immediate neighbors. And there are a lot of very interesting facts about Belarus, and we are trying to focus on that as well. One of the things that we believe, the Belarusian American Association is that there should be people-to-people contacts among Americans, Western Europeans, everywhere in the world with the Belarusian people. There should be exchanges. There should be ways for people and civil society to interact with each other. We think that's very important because it's our hope that we will see improvements in the human rights and civil liberties context and democracy context in Belarus, and we think that those people-to-people contacts are very important. So, for example, we prepared a fact sheet that we have sent to various reporters and other media explaining some things about Belarus. For example, Slava's already told us that Homel is the second city in Belarus, and Minsk obviously is its capital. But for example, the city of Polotsk in Belarus has been in existence since 862 AD. That's obviously very old. I mean, Belarus has very, very rich, deep history, and there's a lot of very unique aspects to Belarusian history, and we want people to know about that. For another very important fact, Belarus currently has a literacy rate of about 99%. That's fantastic. And so we want people to know that there are very good things about Belarus. And so we're using that the opportunity that the hockey championship presents to also educate people about the country from where my ancestors hail.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Alice. That's great to know. We'll be hearing more again from the inside of what's happening in Belarus from Veronica in just a few minutes. And just to remind our viewers, we've got about 20 minutes left, and if you'd like to submit a question for us, then you can do so via JBANC's Twitter account, JBANC Chatter, or via JBANC's Facebook account, and we'll try to get to those. I see that we do have some viewers with us right now. And now I'd like to turn over to Catherine Fitzpatrick. Kathy. Kathy's a veteran of the international human rights movement and has been active on human rights issues in the Eurasian region for 35 years. She's been a regular contributor of news articles and translations to a number of websites, including Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and EurasiaNet. And she's currently a translator and writer for the interpreter. So, Kathy, I'm going to turn it right over to you, and just with a couple of questions for you, since you are have been dealing on a daily basis with the media and with information from that information aspect. Can you elaborate on this aspect and the media perhaps surrounding the championship from that perspective? And also you mentioned that you had recently spoke at a Belarus conference in New York, and what was the buzz there? What are people talking about, and what can you take that from somebody who's living in New York or in the United States?
Well, sure, Carl. First of all, just to say a little bit on the human rights perspective, I very much believe that you have to advocate boycotts of these kinds of big sports events with these authoritarian countries. I mean, the whole sports complex, going back to the Soviet era and really unchanged in these countries, are not really about fair play in sports as we understand it. They're more about the architecture of tyranny. They're used to control young people. The training can be very harsh. They're very much used to brand the state and try to build loyalty to the state. So when you go over to Belarus to take part in an event like this, you're joining in a sort of authoritarian extravaganza that isn't really about sports. I mean, so that's sort of one point. However, it's very hard to get boycotts organized. People don't like to go against something that's happy, like sports and people-to-people context. So what you have to do then, when the boycotts fail or the efforts to keep, top political leaders out of the arena fail, then you have to do the kind of thing that Alice is saying, which is try to use the opportunity to get media attention. And of course, it's the media inside Belarus. We've already seen this appalling story you've told us about the two hockey players from the U.S. who wanted to publish an op-ed piece and are frightened of doing that. That should let them know already that they're not playing sports, they're playing dictatorship. It's a different game. So, I would say, well, publish your op-ed piece afterwards then, But during the game itself, certainly people should try to get into the country. If they do manage to get there, they should have ribbons and they should try to speak to the media, and we should try to highlight the cases like Stutkevich, who's been a long-time political prisoner. Certainly Bilotsky, someone I met many times, with CE, someone who was trying to break out of the isolation of Belarus, who was part of the international community, trying to build bridges with his country and take up the human rights issues in a constructive way, and yet he ends up in jail. So, this is the kind of thing where we try to play catch-up with it, but the rules have already been established by Lukashenko. As far as the conference in New York, well, this was a very wide range of emigres from all different generations and viewpoints. And, in a nutshell, I think there's basically a split between those who think things are so dire now with the threat to the very independence of Belarus because of the events in Ukraine, because of Putin's aggressive annexation of the Crimea, that there are some who feel that they need to rally around the dictator in order for the sake of preserving their very country. And that's certainly not a view I would take, and I think others with more of a human rights perspective and free media perspective in this meeting were saying, well, no, we've got to somehow do both. We have to fight the Russian expansionism and try to preserve our own independence, and it's possible to walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, we don't have to make these false choices, and certainly it doesn't depend on us abroad or the emigre community. So we do actually have the luxury of taking moral positions and opposing both Lukashenko and Putin. As far as is there any benefit to the ordinary person, or do they actually end up getting endangered? Well, the bad side of these things we don't see and aren't going to be on the CBS cameras, and that's how they sweep up people, and not only the political dissenters, but they tend to pick up all the homeless and the sex workers and the gays and everybody that's undesirable, and then those people are locked up, and ordinary people can be slapped around and kept away, and it's a very sanitized zone. So I don't know how much you really reach ordinary people. So I don't think goals are really achieved by these big sports events, and we can just, as I said, try to use them to raise our issues. I think that there's a real crisis for people now over Ukraine and how to respond, given that Germany and some other countries are taking a more engagement and sort of cooperation role with Russia, and others are pushing for sanctions, and civil society is very much caught in that crossfire. So I think it's a very tough time for us, and the best we can do is try to articulate these issues for the media.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and I think we want to return to some of these points that you brought up. It was really interesting to hear, that especially I think that we've found out with the Russian Federation right now that sometimes we give them too much of the benefit of the doubt, and certainly politics and the relationship with Russia and with events in Ukraine play into this very much, and maybe that's something that you, Franek, can discuss, and we'll get back to these points. I think with everybody, open it up to our participants today to maybe delve a little bit more into these questions. But again, I'm happy to have we're happy to have with us today Franek Wieczorka, who's coming to us from somewhere in Belarus today. You're on the ground, so what can you say about the situation right there on the day before the opening of the hockey games, of the hockey championship? Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing for Belarus? And maybe just a little bit more for the background again. I know Slava brought it up in Alice, but about the decision to have the games there. What is at stake for Lukashenko?
So maybe I will disappoint you. I already left Belarus yesterday. I was hiding during 2 days from police. Actually, it began 2 days ago. I woke up from the police noise near the door of my flat. Police was trying to come in. We didn't let them go in. After that, I left illegally my house and was hiding for maybe 24 hours. They came once again. They were harassing, crying to my sister that they want to be sure that I am not home. They said that they must interrogate me for the case of the fire in a military department or something like this. And I decided to leave Belarus for a time of ice hockey championship, and now I'm this moment I came yesterday night to Prague, and now I'm in the office of Radio Free Europe and writing news about what's happening in Minsk. And all my friends, all my colleagues who stayed there, they are already in prison cells. So the worst that could happen before ice hockey championship, it happened. Lukashenko decided to make sterile background before the tournament. He isolate everyone who could get the danger for him and for his games. And I'm very happy that I'm still free, and I hope I will do much more while I'm here during these 3 weeks than in jail. So, and for me, it's a great pleasure to be the part of your discussion today.
Thanks, Franek. We're glad you're safe, and hope that your family and your colleagues, your compatriots, also remain safe there. And we're all, we're working together for a brighter future in Belarus. Of course, it's quite a concern to the Baltics too, and especially developments in the region soon. We see that the situation really hasn't improved much in Belarus since the fraudulent 2010 elections. But perhaps, and just to go back to Franek, and then we'd like to open it up and hear from everybody else, maybe more open discussion. But Franek, when are the next elections scheduled, and do you see any hopes in those? We saw in the Russian Federation that actually on the local level that some of the opposition parties or individuals to the party in power, United Russia, were able to make some headway. But is the situation? Is there any positive news from Belarus right now?
I have a big hope for grassroots initiatives. We can see how ambulance workers in Minsk started the protest, and it became a national campaign for several days in Minsk. I mean, traditional political parties, forces, NGOs, they are not able to protest, to contest with all Lukashenko's officials, policemen, and special security services. So what I see that Lukashenko already totally infiltrated opposition and made it absolutely unable to play by the traditional schemes. I also see that elections lost all the sense, and there is no sense to participate in them. Even 2015, they will be falsified in the same way as it was this year. when nobody counted votes. I also see a big interest among the youth, among young people in Minsk and regions, a big interest of internet technologies, of Belarusian uncensored history and culture. Language courses, lectures of Belarusian language are very popular and gather every week 100 and 1,000 around all Belarus. We see a big wave of popularity of idea of independence, of Belarusian traditions, and especially language that could be a great weapon now to start a new grassroots movement to bring changes to Belarus. I also hope that the youth and my friends, colleagues, we will use campaign 2015 to not to win, no chance to win in elections that are really fake, but we will use this campaign to make fun of the system, to break the fear. Especially now, ice hockey championship shows that people are afraid to do anything. And, any idea of traditional protest, it is annihilated on the first step. So the only one way is to break traditions, break traditional schemes. As example, I can show you, for example, Radio Free Europe campaign. We made a marketing campaign with plastic bags. Yes, here you can see freedom to ice hockey players. It's a slogan. It's a plastic bags, and we started to distribute, to disseminate these plastic bags around markets in different cities and towns around Belarus. We disseminated 50,000 of plastic bags. Nobody detained us, even policemen. They took these plastic bags and helped to distribute them. So what I mean that if you will distribute leaflet or stickers or some other strictly political production, you will be detained, arrested, and spend your days in a cell. But if you find new creative ways how to reach audience, new people, and how to spread your ideas, government is not ready for that. So that's a way for us.
Well, that's very very creative. I've seen a lot of creativity too in the different protests within Belarus over the years. The people who are protesting, even by silently clapping and other forms like that. So I wanted to perhaps ask Vitas. You're in Lithuania, and Freedom House has been on the ground there. I'm not sure for how many years. Maybe you can mention that. And you see in Lithuania the sort of people-to-people contacts, the exchange of younger people who are coming over the borders, and even people who are older who have come to Lithuania for shopping trips, for instance. I think maybe that was something that the Lithuanian government had encouraged at some point. But what is Lithuania doing, or the Baltic countries, or what do you see the international community could be doing more to address this situation in Belarus?
Well, indeed, Freedom House is in Vilnius since for the last 2 years already, working mostly on Belarus. And there's quite a community, international community, like a lot of different international organizations here working towards Belarus. And well, one thing which we need to understand that it's also like an anniversary, 20 years of anniversary of Lukashenko regime this year. So it relates back to the celebration, of this so-called celebration of the regime. So you can see on the Freedom House website the timeline of the human rights abuses, which are lasting for 20 years. And of course, situation is not getting better. And I agree a lot with Franak, what he told, that there are the good initiatives do exist, and the online community is pretty vibrant. But I think that donors, implementers, like neighboring countries, should support Belarusians, but should support Belarusian activists in a sense that much more things should be happening offline rather than online, and the way bigger attention should be drawn to the regions, not only in Minsk, and because, well, I agree, the cultural stuff is really good. It encourages people. Humor is the way how to fight fear, but it should be happening offline more. I understand another thing, that after the events in Ukraine, a lot of people are really terrified of the outcomes. Well, you had the Maidan, you had the inspiration of the example of the people power, and now I think that the Belarusian people activists are much more afraid, not of Lukashenko actually, but of Putin, of Russia, because if something like Maidan happened in Belarus, that might end up pretty badly. So I think that we should express the solidarity with the human rights activists in Belarus. We should support them in any means possible. For instance, Freedom House is trying to build bridges and to connect with the Lithuanians here, like sharing their experience with the Czechs, also with the Poles, also connecting Russian, Belarusian, Ukrainian activists, because we see that the regimes are learning from each other. Putin is learning from Lukashenko's regime experience. So I think that the activists and human rights defenders should also learn from each other how to be more resilient towards the against the human rights abuses, and how to find the most effective ways to counter that.
Well, thanks, Vitus. I've been told by our producer, Lita, here in the office, that we're going to add another 10 minutes to the program because we lost 10 minutes at the beginning. So I hope all of you can stay with us for another 10 minutes before we end, if that's okay. I wanted to just see if anybody has any comment that they would like to make on any of the points made today.
Yeah, I want to pick up what Frantica was saying. I think he's absolutely right that trying to participate in elections is folly and has been for years. And unfortunately, it's been sort of a Western fetish, you know, that the opposition should unite and take part in elections, and that they need to practice, participating in campaigns, and they need to reach their constituents. Well, but the real issue is that, Lukashenko hasn't practiced democracy. And so, what's more important, I think, is to build social movements that are like Poland Solidarity or like Otpor, or the movements in Belarus itself that have done fine without elections. The Popular Front, the Charter 97, European-oriented and local movements of all kinds, and those are the things you need to build up. I think it's also been something of a reprimand to people that are now essentially behind the Iron Curtain again, that they need to get offline and they need to stop chatting on Twitter or Facebook, and they need to go reach the regions. Well, the regions, people have tried to reach the regions, and they are not going to change as long as they're on the payroll of the state. They don't have a lot of options. So I think it's much more important to have the debate about the basic split in everyone's policy, and not just within Belarus, but in Germany or France or Britain. And that is, do you engage with Russia or do you isolate with Russia? And I think the Belarusians are in a very important position to have some very good things to say about that whole debate worldwide, and they should participate. I think just one other point I think was a creative thing to do, and we have to think up lots of creative things, really. Can't run out of ideas on this. Andrei Sonikov, who was also a independent presidential candidate and the founder of Charter 97, he wrote a letter to the head of the hockey World Championship, and he said basically, and I'm just summarizing here, look, you need to take ownership for what's happening as a result of your hockey game, because people are going to be arrested. I mean, he already predicted that. It was easy to do. And, take ownership of the fact that you're engaging with a country that has political prisoners. So raise them. So at least, try to get some quiet diplomacy going around, the aftermath, which is really important as much as the prelude. And, trying to keep a focus after the games and trying to get those hockey players that did take part to speak out after they're out of harm's way. That should be our goal.
Thanks, Kathy. If I can skip over to Slava and to Alice for just a minute. Alice, part of your organization, the Belarus American Association, together with JBANC, we work in Washington also, and on Capitol Hill and with the U.S. administration. So we've heard about from Franek and from Kathy and from Vita some of the NGO campaigns, and then from within and from just outside of Belarus. But what else can the U.S. government take on? I know there's a Belarus Human Rights and Democracy Reauthorization Act, which has been reauthorized every few years, and I'm not sure the current status right now, but that also looks at sanctions. Lukashenko officials are sanctioned, and they're not able to travel to the United States. Their assets have been frozen, and with Vitas just a couple of months ago in Vilnius, I had the real pleasure to sit on a panel with others to talk about the Magnitsky sanctions, which are also being discussed now in more earnestness throughout the capitals of Europe because of Putin's behavior. But what else from your perspective can the U.S. be doing right now?
Sure, I'll take that. I do believe that the investment by the United States and also by EU governments in programs that deal with the expansion of civil society, getting organizations out there of people doing a variety of different things, and as I think several people have pointed out, they don't necessarily need to be political, but just getting people organized, getting them feeling empowered, like they have a certain amount of control over their own destiny, even if it means some local sewing club. And investing in those sorts of programs and contacts is very important. Doing the student exchanges in both directions, that kind of thing, that will allow democracy to flourish in an apolitical way to a certain extent, and can also do things to enhance people's awareness of their culture, their language, those sorts of things. I think that's very important, and that kind of funding continue to allow people in Belarus to try to control their destiny a little bit more. I think on the question of sanctions, clearly there's a split of views on that point as to whether sanctions are good or bad, and who is it hurting, that type of thing. My personal view is that and again, this is my personal view, is that sanctions against the regime are appropriate given the human rights abuses, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't engage with civil society. So I think there is a line that can be walked, as Kathy said. She and I don't know whether we agree on what the line is or is not. We may agree, but you can walk a fine line, and I think that's really important, that there be engagement with civil society and the people in Belarus, but yet the regime needs to be held accountable for what it's been doing, and we need to keep a moral position. We meaning the United States, and again, that's my personal opinion, and clearly there is a split of opinion on that.
Thanks, Al. Slava?
Amnesty International doesn't speak in favor or in opposition to sanctions. And we believe that human rights are human rights, and doesn't really matter if it's Belarus or the United States. But the lessons of Beijing and Sochi teach us that it is very important to continue the human rights campaigning even when the games are over. And in addition to what Alice said, it's very important to continue the monitoring of the human rights situation in Belarus, to publicize the cases of violations of human rights. Also, the US government should work with the counterparts at the European Union. They also have to use their influence at the UN institutions and other international organizations to put a pressure on the Belarusian government.
Great. Anybody else? Veronica, would you like to chime in right now about any of these questions? And what are the? I mean, if you're not in Belarus as you had said right now, so you're not going to be able to go to the hockey championship. But do you have friends who are possibly going there? Also to to be there to talk with people or to talk with foreigners or perhaps the media who were there. What are their expectations? I mean, should they even go there, or should they boycott as Kathy had suggested?
If you probably know, the Swedish human rights defender Martin Ugla, he was not allowed today to come to Belarus. He was detained in a transit zone in the airport. It already means that not everyone who wants to get to Minsk, thankful to this championship, they will do. So, of course, Lukashenko's security services, KGB, they are following who are coming, and they are afraid that some foreigners will come and organize political protests. I know also that few members of European Parliament, like Marek Mikalski, also are planning to come to Minsk for ice hockey championship. But I'm sure Lukashenko's KGB and others, they will prevent any activities for this time. So, no sense to speak about possible using of this championship for spreading information about Belarus legally today. But I know few good initiatives. For example, players of national ice hockey team of Germany invited for a meeting wives of political prisoners, and this meeting will take place in a few days. I also know that, for example, in Czech Republic, the famous commentator, TV anchor, he refused to cover the ice hockey championship because of political repressions in Belarus. And this also plays a very important role in distribution information about human rights violations in Belarus. So do not no hopes for manifestations, activities inside of Belarus, but a big hope to spread information about repressions in a foreign media, for example. I also want to tell about sanctions. Russian-Ukrainian war, let's call like this. It shows that sanctions play a role, but these sanctions should be unified, should be coordinated between Europe, Western Europe, and the United States of America. Only in this case they will be have an impact and effect. Europe, Western world, didn't take any real sanctions towards Lukashenko yet. Limitations for this blacklist persons to European Union, it doesn't play a role at all. The only one time I remember sanctions gave effect, it was a sanction 2009 probably, yes, when Lukashenko, after oil refineries companies and their partners' accounts were blocked in US, only after several political prisoners in Belarus were released. So we have big expectations maybe for strong position of US together with EU, and but I also expect for a big support to independent media in Belarus, because Putin provides a strong, active informational war, not only in side of Russia, not only in East, Southeast Ukraine, but of course Belarus. I am afraid, because in Minsk, in regions, if you speak to ordinary people, they all are speaking only about Banderovцы, fascists, Ukrainian Nazis. They are living by Ukrainian events. They trust to Russian TV channels and radio and internet websites. And for us, it's very important to provide them by independent point of view to this problem. In other case, Belarusians will get a part of Russia much earlier than we can imagine.
You know, one just quick point I wanted to make is the importance of internet TV and U.S. funding that instead of just paying our own consultants, which is where a lot of the money goes. We need to have cross-border internet TV in Russian and in other languages of the region where people can talk to each other. And, you know, that's even more important than the radar stations that we want to put in Poland. And for that, we need Poland and Germany and some of the other countries reluctant to challenge Russia directly on the airwaves to step up and start doing that again. I think it's really the only way we're going to break through that information blockade you're talking about.
Yeah, we have just a couple minutes. Thanks for that, Kathy. I know that there's Belsat television from beaming in from Poland. Slava or Alice, if you wanted to mention anything about that. I know Franek is also very involved with the media and with RFE Belarus broadcasting into Europe. But maybe just as a final word, as we start to conclude the program.
Sure. Belsat is great. Obviously, we would like for it to be even bigger, more programming, and reaching even more people. But I couldn't agree with Franek and Kathy more. There, we need to, and we here is a big we because it is the EU and it is the United States. We really do need to focus in on the media and getting the message out there, and counteracting some of the propaganda that people are getting from the Russian media, and that problem is a lot bigger than Belarus. It is all over the region. It's a big issue in Ukraine. It's a big issue within Russia itself. It is clearly a big issue in Belarus and elsewhere, and we need to be much more proactive in that regard because there is a lot of bad information, disinformation that's out there, and the folks that are sending it out there are very good at it, and they've been trained well at it, and we need to step it up from the democratic angle and the Western angle, and really get our message out there, and we aren't doing nearly the job that we need to be doing, and that really is critical for the entire region.
Well, thank you. With that, Alice, I think you've had the final word here in our program for today. So an hour goes by very quickly, or in our case, an hour and 13 minutes. But I wanted to thank Alice Kippel, who's on the right here on the screen from the Belarus American Association, and to her right, Slava Bortnik from Amnesty International here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us. From Lithuania, from Vilnius, the capital, Vitas Jurkonis from the Freedom House office there. Thank you, Vitas, for coming with us. You win the award, well, together with Franek, let's say, for being our most long-distance participant today. Thanks. Have a great day. And we have Franek Viachorka, who I had mentioned, has just escaped from Belarus, is now in Prague in the Czech Republic. Thank you, Franek, for being with us today and for taking the time. And also to Kathy Fitzpatrick here in New York. Thank you all for your comments today, for your participation, and then just as a final word, besides thanking our speakers, we look forward to having additional JBANC Google Plus Hangouts on this same channel over the next few months, and continuing our tradition of interactive online discussions to bring to our communities and to our networks relevant, timely, and thought-provoking discussions on important issues. So I'd like to thank our hosts, the Joint Baltic American National Committee, our three parent organizations, the American Latvian Association, the Estonian American National Council, and the Lithuanian American Council. And special thanks to my colleague Lita Uberta for producing the program today. And I made the coffee today, but maybe she'll make it the next time. Thank you all. See you the next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.